Every girl having flaws in appearance dreams of correcting them. I'm no exception. I really didn't like my nose. It marred my face, distorted all my beauty. All the nose first, then she jokes are about me. My dissatisfaction with the years only accumulated, and then one day I exploded and decided to have plastic surgery. My name is Kat, by the way. Many people now think that I may be too critical of myself, that I have low self-esteem, or I have nothing stupid to do, but this is not the case. Since early childhood, I began to complex this potato on my face. Every time I looked at fashion magazines or music videos, I only paid attention to the nose of models and stars. Have you ever seen Miss Universe have a nose bigger than her face? No. Even in fairy tales, princesses always had everything in proportion. It seems that only my parents admired their daughter's beauty. My mother said I was making it up, but I knew she was calming me down. But no, there was another person, my classmate Jim. He's my best friend and always said I was too fixated on my nose. He was a devoted friend and could find the right words in a bad mood. So, last summer I had a birthday, and closer to this date, my parents asked what gift I would like to get. Well, I didn't hesitate to answer, plastic surgery! Mom and Dad were taken aback. They began to complain that the ugliness of my nose was just a fantasy, and again began to shower meaningless compliments. I was firm in my choice and said that I would still do the operation. After a couple days of persuasion, they agreed. I found a clinic myself. It was one of the best in our city. I made an appointment for a consultation with a doctor, after which I was assigned the day of the operation. I went there with my mother. I was still terribly excited and scared because I had never been on the operating table in my life. The doctor put a mask on my face and told me to count to 10. I fell asleep on the number 7. I remember dreaming that I wake up and see that the doctors made my nose even bigger, even uglier. It's like I come to class and my classmates are laughing at me and everyone has a potato instead of a head. Then I look in the mirror and I see that I also have potatoes. I screamed and woke up in a cold sweat, and my mother immediately began to comfort me. It turns out that I began to recover from the anesthesia and I imagined all sorts of things. My face was bandaged. It was painful, and terrible edema prevented me from fully moving my face, eating, and talking. Then everything healed well, and finally when the last bandages were removed, I saw my reflection in the mirror in all its glory. They made me the nose I wanted. The nose, not the nose. Now my face looked feminine and neat, and I felt pretty as hell. I didn't tell anyone about my change except Jim. He was terribly upset, but I didn't care. The operation just fell on summer holidays, so I have enough time to recover more or less and get used to the new image. My classmates were initially offended that I did not communicate with them and generally disappeared for a while, but I wanted to surprise them. After staying at home for a while, the first thing I did was call my friends and ask them to go for a walk. Before that, I dressed up. I felt changes not only outside, but also inside me, so I decided to change the image as well. Finally, everyone will know that I am beautiful and stop laughing at me. That night, I appeared to the girls completely different, a new Kat. Everyone was delighted. I received a lot of compliments, and they were all real, sincere. I wanted to walk and walk so that everyone could see the new me, confident. In general, that evening I had unforgettable emotions. I came home in full ecstasy. I was smiling like never before and still couldn't get enough of my reflection. The next day, Jim came to see me. He's probably the only one who messed it up. He said that I looked better before, that I shouldn't have made such sacrifices for the opinion of spoiled classmates, called me characterless, and left. I couldn't believe. I thought he was my best friend. We were friends for so many years. I always helped him with his studies, was there when it was necessary, and he dares to come to my house and just spoil the mood? Get out of here! If you don't like the new me, you don't have to talk. I really need you after this. You can't even be happy for me like our classmates. I shouted at him. Jim listened to everything and then turned away and started to leave, but said in the end, "You were always beautiful, especially inside yourself. The operation disfigured not only your nose, but all of you. You always cared about the opinions of your spoiled classmates. They don't care about you," he shouted. I hated him for saying that and sent him away. We didn't speak for the rest of the holidays. Then school started, and we met at school. Despite the incident with Jim, I had to be on top. So I dressed up as prettily as possible and came to school. The day before, I imagined walking into the classroom and all eyes would be directed in my direction. It was very exciting. Finally, I will be the most beautiful and my classmates will stop laughing at me. But as soon as I entered, instead of exclamations of admiration, I heard a giggle. My smile disappeared from my face. I didn't understand what was happening or why they were laughing. I was supposed to be the most beautiful. Then the teacher came into the classroom and interrupted my train of thought. At the end of the lesson, I was approached by the same classmates who we met on vacation. They said I would never be one of them.
"You will always be nosy cat to us,"
one of them whispered sarcastically. I was alone again. I couldn't hold back my tears. Hysterical, I went home and locked myself in my room. I was so disappointed, and I don't know who I was most angry at, myself or them. In the evening, Jim came to see me. He said that he saw everything and reminded me again how real I am. I told you you were beautiful inside and out. It doesn't matter if you have an operation. Is it important for what? To become better for yourself or to win the attention of worthless people? He asked. I thought about his words and realized that what really matters is not so much external changes as internal ones. And my life after the operation clearly showed this.
How does it feel to wake up during surgery? When you can't move or speak, but you feel everything that's happening to you at this moment. Sometimes I read several similar horror stories before, but I couldn't imagine that I myself would one day encounter this. This is the moment when you feel your organs like someone is swarming in them. Unpleasant sensations. I've always looked after my health. A healthy diet, lots of fruit, and daily workouts. By the way, I play football for the national team of our school. To be correct, I was playing. It didn't seem to mean anything, but once we played in the yard together with a parallel class. The contestants had a guy named Bill on their team. Large build and very clumsy. And what do you think? To my misfortune, he fell with all his weight on me. So much so that I broke all the bones in my foot. Of course, he didn't do it on purpose. At first, I didn't even notice anything from the shock. But when I realized what had happened, the pain suddenly made itself felt. I even lost consciousness for a moment. I only woke up when I was being taken in an ambulance, sitting next to the doctor. When he saw me, he said that he had done anesthesia and would perform the operation, namely, you need to put a plate on the bone. Then I was not able to think about anything, but it was terribly scary. The doctor assured me that this is a standard operation and there's nothing to be afraid of, but I still worried. For me, it was the first operation in my life, and even if everyone around you says there's nothing wrong with it, it's still kind of creepy to imagine how you'll be cut and then dig inside. It's like a horror movie. But the doctors I got a good one. They joked and tried to cheer me up. Already in the operating room, an anesthesiologist approached me and also threw a couple of jokes to diffuse the situation. He put a tube in my nose, and I suddenly felt heavy. Everything swam, and I passed out exactly as it should be. In general, everything went on as usual, but then something happened in this quiet course of the operation that no one could have expected. As far as I remember, I started to wake up slowly. The brain couldn't figure out what was going on. My mind was trying to wake up. My body felt heavy. I tried to open my eyes, but it was difficult. As soon as I opened my eyelids, a bright light was shining directly on my face. After getting used to it a little, I finally opened my eyes completely and for about another minute tried to understand what was happening. I found that a tube had been inserted into my right nostril, and it was probably used for air to breathe better, but my nostril was blocked. I didn't understand what was happening because I vaguely remembered that I was in surgery, and the last thing I remembered was that after I was anesthetized, I asked my assistants to tell me a story before going to bed. I was lying on the operating table, and I continued to do the operation in real time. I felt holes being drilled into my bones one by one. There was no pain. I only felt the moments when the drill passed through the bone wall. It can be compared to how metal plates were drilled in labor lessons. First, the effort, and then abruptly releases. Here and I felt the sound of a drill. Don't know how it's called honey tool. And these pushes, time after time. I began to panic wildly. But as they say, trouble does not come alone. The anesthesia must have numbed my entire body, and I couldn't even move my lips. I couldn't scream or move my hands. All that remained was just to watch the process. My head was all mixed up. The doctors didn't even notice that I was awake and continued to operate calmly. I've seen them pass tools to each other. Imagine personally watching how you do the operation and at the same time not being able to somehow draw attention to yourself. It's just something unreal. When the panic passed, I decided that it was probably quite interesting. Not everyone will get this opportunity, you know? And there was no pain. So I even got used to it. But suddenly, one of the assistants glanced at my face and then froze in disbelief. It was obvious she didn't expect this, flustered from the surprise. The girl quickly refilled the tube and added more anesthesia. I fell asleep before the end of the operation, and I woke up when the incision was sewn up. But even then, I should not have woken up. Apparently, my body at that time categorically refused to sleep, but the assistants were already ready for this, and already quickly put me to sleep. I woke up in the ward and was recovering a little. At that moment, a doctor came to me and asked how I was feeling. Everything was normal, and I noticed that all the paramedics were crowded behind the door. Apparently, they were very curious to see such a restless patient. I felt like a star. My doctor smiled, but it was obvious that he was very worried about his mistake in front of me. But I'm not offended. On the contrary, I love adrenaline. Have any of you experienced this situation? Tell us under the video, and don't forget to subscribe and share my story with your friends. Can and with them occurred such interesting history.